Morley Robbins, known as the Magnesium Man, is the creator of the root cause protocol and a leading expert on magnesium's crucial role in our health, highlighting its interaction with minerals like iron and copper. With a BA in biology and an MBA in healthcare administration, Morley transitioned from a 32-year career in hospital administration to natural healing after a personal health crisis led him to discover the transformative power of magnesium and chiropractic care. The experience propelled him to delve into natural healing, leading to the foundation of the Magnesium Advocacy Group, which boasts 250,000 members. Morley, having conducted over 7,500 consultations worldwide, is dedicated to educating people on overcoming fatigue and chronic diseases by addressing mineral imbalances, particularly through the root cause protocol. His work emphasizes the importance of copper, magnesium, and iron in preventing inflammation and cellular metabolic dysfunction, aiming to shift the paradigm of nutritional health and wellness. And before we hop into the podcast, a quick word from our sponsor, Deep Wealth and the Deep Wealth Mastery Program. We have William, a graduate of Deep Wealth Mastery, and he says, I didn't have the time for Deep Wealth Mastery, but I made the time and I'm glad I did. What I learned goes far beyond any other executive program or coach I've ever experienced. Or how about Bruce? Bruce says, before Deep Wealth Mastery, the challenge I had with most business programs, coaches, or books was that they were one dimensional. Through Deep Wealth Mastery, I'm part of a richer community of other successful business owners. The ideas shared forever changed the trajectory of the business, and best of all, the experience was fun. And we'll round things out with Stacy. Stacy said, I wish I had access to the Deep Wealth Mastery before my liquidity event, as it would have been extremely helpful. Deep Wealth Mastery exceeded my expectations in terms of content and quality. And you know what, my Deep Wealth Nation, why they're saying this is because Deep Wealth Mastery, it's the only system based on a 9-figure deal. That was my deal. And as you know, I said no to a 7-figure offer, and I created a system that we now call Deep Wealth Mastery that helped myself and my business partners welcome from a different buyer, a different offer, a 9-figure exit. So if you're interested in growing your profits, preparing for a future liquidity event, if that's 2 years away or 20 years away, and you want to optimize your post-exit life, Deep Wealth Mastery is for you. Please email success@deepwealth.com. Again, that's success, success at deepwealth.com. We'll send you all the information about Deep Wealth Mastery, otherwise known as Scale for Ultimate Sale. That's where you want to be. You want to be with other successful business owners, entrepreneurs, and founders just like you who are looking to create market disruptions, and they want to lock in their financial freedom and have success and fulfillment. That's the 90-day Deep Wealth Mastery Program. It has your name on it. All you need to do is take the next step. Send an email to success@deepwealth.com. Welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast. Well, you heard it in the official introduction. We have not only a trendsetter, but we have a disruptor, a health disruptor with us in the house of Deep Wealth, because we always say that your first wealth is your health. And before we speak to Morley, for all you out there in Deep Wealth Land, I have to share a personal confession. As you know, I'm always looking at my health, a bit of a biohacker. I'm trying everything and anything. I wasn't getting results in one specific area. We'll talk about that. Somehow stumbled upon Morley, and he's really been the North Star, the shining light that thankfully has got me to better sleep, feeling better, overcoming a lot of things that perhaps you're going through. We're going to talk all about that, but I'm going to put a plug in it right there. Morley, welcome to Deep Wealth Podcast. Really excited to have you with us. There's always a story behind the story. So Morley, what's your story? What got you from where you were to where you are today?
Well, first of all, Jeffrey, delighted to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. A frozen shoulder. I'm a pre-med retread, had designs of being a doctor. That wasn't going to happen. And I only got rejected by 18 medical schools. If you don't go to medical school, you're going to go to business school, become a hospital executive, which I did, because then you can boss the doctors around, which I did. And so I did that for about 12 years. And then I went into consulting, where your listeners, I'm sure there are many of them who are consultants of some form or fashion. Well, you spend your life on airplanes. And so for 20 years, I was pulling a suitcase behind my back and my shoulder locked up. And it was incredibly painful. Couldn't sleep. And so I went to a health food store. Said, what do you have for frozen shoulder? And they said, you need to go see Dr. Liz. And I put my hands up to say, I don't do witchcraft. Don't send me to a chiropractor. So they sold me some supplements. They didn't work. I came back 2 months later, said, you must have something stronger. And the owner looked me in the eye and said, Morley, we love you. Go see Dr. Liz. So with my tail between my legs, I went to see Dr. Liz. who healed my frozen shoulder with a very unusual chiropractic adjustment by adjusting the inside of, there's a pterygoid muscle in the inside of your jaw. And that muscle, believe it or not, regulates the function of your shoulder. I didn't know that. I don't think many people do know that. In any event, with the full weight of her body, she was pressing on that muscle. It was very painful. But as she did, my arm lifted for the first time in several months. And it was as close to a miracle as I'd ever want to get to. And used a phrase in our conversation after that about an innate healer. And I looked at her with this very puzzled look on my face. And I thought, if there's an innate healer, why do we have millions of doctors around the world? And so I've been on a 15-year quest to discover who the innate healer is. And in my learned opinion, after researching and reading 10,000 scientific articles, it's what I call bioavailable copper that regulates iron and our immune system, and an amazing mineral resource that we are endowed with that no one knows about. So I appreciate the opportunity to share these concepts with you and your audience because it's the best kept secret on planet Earth.
Absolutely. So let's talk about a few things because you put a lot in there that we're going to unpack. And firstly, let's get one thing off the table for the listeners. What you're talking about doesn't require prescriptions. It
Right.
doesn't require costly therapies. So, in other words, and our listeners, they are business people. They're in business to be in business. And by
Right.
the way, let me preface this that we are not saying medical advice or telling you to do something. Always check with your doctor before you're doing anything. But I know there's some listeners saying, well, Morley, Jeffrey, if this is so great as you say it is, why haven't I heard about it from my doctor? Why haven't I read about it in the popular press? And the short answer for our listeners is there's no money in it. And if there's no money in it, you're not going to hear about it in the popular press. And I would even go so as far as to say, and call me a conspiracy theorist kind of person, that let's put it, the people in the medical industry have it in their best interest to really take some of these things and knock their credibility down, put some false information out, make sure that when you read things, it's going to sound scary and dangerous because, again, they all want to buy into their business model to do whatever these prescriptions are going to be doing. So let's put that out there. And then the other thing, Morley, so this one visit that you had set you on a life-changing path where you're going to be sharing things with the listeners. And I know I keep myself up to health. Some of the things that you're sharing with me, I even question. No spoilers, or I guess it's a spoiler alert, like vitamin D. Why have you got vitamin D all wrong? And most things that we're reading in the popular press, not only is it wrong, it's dangerous. We'll talk about all those things, but that you've put together a system, a methodology that's low cost, high results, very effective, and for the most part, not dangerous. How am I doing? Am I on base, off base? Where am I with this?
No, I need to hire you as my PR expert. You're doing a great job. No, that's exactly it. And the thing is, we've all grown up with stress. Mine was a very sickly family. And I think when I had this encounter with Dr. Liz, who's now my wife, by the way, it's significant. It was a very significant life-changing event. But I really felt the need to democratize healing. I knew the system wasn't right. I knew it had its flaws, but not on the scale that I know now. And you summarized it beautifully with the moneyed interest, and there's no benefit to healing and what have you. That, as disorienting as that might be for your listeners to hear, it's absolutely true. And the protocol that I developed is really designed to put the individual back in control because our ancestors, our great-grandparents, did not have an ologist for every part of their body. That's just insane that we've now conditioned ourselves to think that we need this litany of doctors to make sure we get through the day. And that's just wrong. And our maker and Mother Nature designed us beautifully. There's a very incredibly powerful and sophisticated blueprint, as I call it, that knows how to run our body, knows how to regulate our body, knows how to deal with the pathogens if it gets energy from the food that we eat. And the part that we missed is they changed the food system over the last century. We're not getting the nutrients and the minerals that our ancestors got. And we're being subjected to some very powerful chemicals, as you can imagine, in the farming system and the food processing system and the pharmaceutical system. And they are accelerating our loss of key minerals, especially magnesium and copper, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And when I began to realize the order of magnitude of change, I began to realize, well, maybe this is my opportunity, is to share these insights with the public and begin to cut against the grain of the narrative. And there is a narrative. I think we learned that in 2020. We know there is a narrative. And now we can begin to step back from it and say, well, if there's more to the story, particularly around our health, what is it? And that's really what I've tried to do in developing what's called the root cause protocol, and give people what are called a series of stops and starts. You've identified a couple of the key stops. Stop taking vitamin D, stop taking iron, stop taking zinc. And that sounds heretical to say that. But what I can prove in the literature is that those minerals and nutrients that we're being advised to take are in fact weakening our metabolism, weakening our immune system, and bringing longevity to its knees in our body. And that's not good.
Okay. And so let's talk about that. Before we do, I want to put a few things out there for our listeners. In Deep Wealth, we're always talking about tuning into the world's favorite radio station, WII.FM, the What's in It for Me radio station. And so for our listeners, coming out of today's episode, what's in it for you? I'm going to ask some rhetorical questions. You know me, I love my rhetorical questions. So for our listeners, are you experiencing brain fog? Are you tired? Has your new normal become pain, that you forgot what it's like to not feel pain and to move around really carefree and boundless and have all kinds of energy, that those days you feel are long gone? Are new symptoms creeping up on you that you're just chalking it up to quote unquote old age, and that's what's expected and that's what should be here? Are you saying to yourself, I've had better days behind me than I have in front of me? And if you said yes to at least one of those questions, that's what we're talking about. Because when it comes to your financial wealth, we've got to start with our health. Again, our health is our first wealth. Even if you had all the riches, all the material wealth in the world, if you're in pain or if you can't enjoy it or you're not mobile, what good is that? It's of no good. It's of no use. And even to really get those wins, chalk up those wins and have that liquidity event, get that new client, get the best deal of a lifetime. How in the world are you going to do that if you're not thinking clearly, if you don't have those energy? So that's what we're doing here, is clearing up a lot of the myths that are out there. So that's what's in it for you for all of our listeners. And what you heard Morley say was he came up with RCP. And so RCP, the root cause protocol, is going to what's the actual symptom. And the analogy, Morley, that I like to give, again, you can tell me if I'm off base or on base, no slight here at the medical system or at the doctors. They are doing the best that they can with what they've been given. As an example, though, if I have a hammer that's always hammering on my thumb, and I go to my doctor and say, gee, doc, I'm in all this pain around my hand, my thumb, I'll get maybe a prescription for some kind of painkiller. But the pain may go away, but the hammer, that proverbial hammer, is always striking the thumb, and the problem is still going to be there. So Morley, you're saying, hey, why don't we identify what that problem is and remove it? And the last analogy that I'm going to give, Morley, if you ask me, how does the engine in my car work, or how does my car work? All I could tell you is I hop in the car, I push a button, the engine starts, and I drive. And so what I'm hearing you say is when we give the body what it needs, when it has the right type of environment around it, it knows what to do on its own to put us in a healing state or an optimal health. How am I doing?
Very well summarized. No, it's exactly what it is. We have been trained like circus bears. I'm assuming you've seen a circus bear wearing the pink tutu and riding the bike. But we've been trained like circus bears, that our body is stupid, that our body breaks down. The body doesn't know how to regulate itself. The body doesn't know how to stay in balance. And that's been over the course of our lifetime. I would argue that it started about a century ago, right after the First World War. And we could dispute that. But the point is, a lot of changes have been made over the last 100 years. And we've basically been boiling the frog 1 degree at a time. Very gradual changes. And when you begin to introduce the right nutrients, the nutrients that are designed to empower our body, make energy, make decisions, regulate our immune system, body knows exactly what to do. It's absolutely amazing. And I never would have imagined that it would be so straightforward, but more importantly, so simple to come upon these changes. And then the challenge, of course, is getting people with high IQ, like you and your listeners, to believe that it can be that simple. Because people with high IQ love things complicated. And so it's the challenge we face now is getting people to remove the layers and layers of complexity that they're working from and realize that the body does have this elegant simplicity to it. And it is well orchestrated, but it all revolves around energy, as you would expect, right? It's the currency of our body, its ability to make energy that enables us to get through the day and to deal with our stress. And that's at the center of this whole discussion, Jeffrey, is we're all under stress. Anyone who has money is worrying about how to either make more of it or lose less of it. So there's always going to be stress. If you've got businesses, you're going to be stressed out about those businesses. And what's important for people to realize is that whenever we're under stress, whether it's acute or chronic, we're going to lose minerals. Magnesium is very easily lost under acute stress. Copper is lost under chronic stress. And the reason why this is important to understand is that when we are faced with stress, which is what life is, an ongoing series of stressors, but when we're faced with stress, we need to respond by making energy. And the best definition of stress I've ever come across was by Mark Hyman, who's a very noted functional physician at Cleveland Clinic. And he says, stress is the body's inability to make energy, the mind to respond to its environment. And then we come back to your rhetorical questions that you just asked a few minutes ago. And when people have brain fog and they feel stressed out and what have you, that's what's in play is it's lack of energy. And when you can't make enough energy, you cannot respond to the ongoing stress of your life. And that's really what this whole approach is designed to do, is make sure that we are properly mineralized, that we've got the right vitamins and nutrients to enable our inborn innate metabolism and immune system to do what it knows how to do best. And that's keep us in balance, keep us moving forward, responding and being resilient. What is resiliency? It's responding to the stress with an appropriate level of energy. And
Sure.
that's really what this is all about.
And so, Morley, let's just do a few more things as we now go into the foundation. And by the way, for our listeners on this episode, each one of these areas that we're talking about, that could be an episode on its own. So Morley and I, ahead of time, we're talking offline. We said, let's have this as the foundation. And hopefully we'll have the opportunity where Morley will come back and share his wisdom and his insights with us. Morley, I want to get a few things off the table for the listeners. We're not going to go into the reasons why. We're going to ask for some of their faith in what we're saying is true, and on their own, they can research it. But it's safe to say that as we look at our food system, our water, our air today, it's definitely not the same as our great grandparents or even our great grandparents, or take it back one more generation. The
Right.
food has less minerals in it. It's more polluted. The water is certainly polluted. The air we're breathing is certainly polluted. And because of that, we're not getting the minerals that we would normally get. So, a very superficial example, an apple today compared to an apple of my great grandparents, it's a very different apple. It may look the same, but the nutrients or lack of, that's what we're talking about. So, what we're saying for starters, what we're putting into our body, whether it's the air we breathe or the food or the water, not only has less nutrients, there's more pollutants, there's more chemicals, there's more poisons, if you will, that are putting the body under stress. And that as the body goes under stress, or as it doesn't get all those nutrients, it's not able to heal itself or to optimize how we should be in terms of vibrant and feeling terrific and full of energy. How am I doing so far? On base, off base?
Absolutely on base. Absolutely.
Terrific. So now that we have that, again, for our listeners, you can dive into that on your own and see what's going on with that. Again, take us for a word on that. So, Morley, why don't we pick one of the bigger areas out there that you want our listeners to hear about? Because, again, let's take the supposition that I go to my family doctor, I have my annual physical, I get the 5 minutes of my doctor's time. Jeffrey, the blood panel looks great, everything looks great, keep on doing what you're doing. Or, hey, there's been a few changes, I'm going to prescribe some kind of prescription drug for you. Check in with me within a year, but you should be okay. So, what's the missing subtext from that? What's the biggest problem or the biggest mineral that we're missing that we can begin to add back in to start changing things?
Probably the most missing mineral would be magnesium.
Okay.
And right on the heels, that probably would be potassium.
Hmm.
They are related. But magnesium is very easily lost to acute stress. And there are, as you well know, there are thousands of different forms of stress, but they can easily be categorized into four categories. We have physical stress. You fell down a flight of stairs, you're in a car accident, what have you. Then we've got stress.
Hmm.
As you've just noted, the air is different, water is different, things like that. Then we have physiological or metabolic stress. That's what's going on inside our body. And there's a whole series of chemical reactions that people don't think about, but those need to be happening with a certain degree of precision and a certain degree of energy.
Hmm.
And then there's a fourth category that everyone thinks about, and that's psychological stress. They're worrying about, I've got a deadline, I had a fight with my spouse, I've got these coworkers I've got to deal with, what have you. But those are the four broad categories of stress that were developed by famous physician and magnesium expert Mildred Seeley back in the 60s and 70s. And the one that I think is that I would add to that would accelerate the magnesium loss is called iron stress.
Okay.
We haven't really talked about that yet, but we live on a planet. Number one element is iron. We don't think about that. 36% of the Earth's composition is iron, and there's a lot of oxygen in the air, right? Like 20%, 21% oxygen. What does iron and oxygen like to do? It likes to create rust. And we recognize a rusty nail, a rusty pipe, a rusty car. We've never thought about the fact that the aging process is, in fact, rusting on the inside. And when that rust is happening, it's called, the fancy word for rust is called oxidative stress. The oxygen has changed its form. It is not available to make energy. And when the oxidative stress builds in our body, it causes magnesium loss. See, what the word that's missing in medicine and nutrition, it's a very simple word. Why am I magnesium deficient?
Hmm.
Why is my vitamin D low? Why is my cholesterol high? Why is my this or that not where it's supposed to be? Practitioners are not asking the why, they're just taking a very prescribed response, like whack-a-mole medicine. They see a low number, they respond to the low number, but they're not asking the most important question: why? What's the reason? What is the metabolic reason? What's the mineral reason behind the metabolic reason? And that's really what these conversations are going to do for people, is to realize that yes, it makes perfect sense to take magnesium every day. The formula that I use is based on Mildred Selig's original formula of, she did it in milligrams. It was 10 milligrams per kilogram. Because I'm not Canadian, I put it into US units, and it's 5 milligrams per pound body weight. And when people start to do that, their stress level goes down, which is beautiful. And what's important to know is that when we don't have enough magnesium in our body, it's like we're wearing night vision binoculars. It's bigger and brighter than it really is. And we have a tendency to overreact to the stress that we're under. But when you
Got it.
begin to introduce the right amount of magnesium into your diet and into your supplement routine, it's called the chill pill. Everything levels out. And you may still have the same level of stress, but it's not driving you to distraction. That's the difference.
So, Morley, if we put a pause on things for just a moment, and again, you can tell me, Jeffrey, you're way off base, or yeah, you're spot on with what you're saying. So, what we've talked about so far, because of the change in the food system, our water, our air, the amount of magnesium that we're getting within our body from what we would normally intake, that has gone down. And then you add to that the stresses that we have just from everyday living. We
Right.
have less magnesium to begin with. The magnesium that we do have, and we don't have enough of it, it's being burned up by stress, by worry, by pressures, by what's going on in the news, all those other things. So the body is now in a deficit. And you gave a fairly simple kind of calculation. If you took, let's say, a 200-pound person, if it's 5 milligrams, 200 pounds, So that's
Correct.
1,000 milligrams. So you need for a 200-pound person 1,000 milligrams of magnesium. Or if it's someone who, let's say, is 150 pounds, it's going to be
Mhm.
750 milligrams of
Right.
magnesium. And now we're beginning to give our body what it needs from what we're not getting in our food supply. And Morley, again, I could be off base on this. If I'm under severe stress or I'm really depleted, is it a little bit more magnesium in the beginning for my body to catch up, or we just start at that level and stay at that level?
No, it's a very important nuance, Jeffrey. I absolutely would encourage people, if they know they're in a storm, you want to make sure you're getting additional magnesium. Here's how you know whether you're getting enough magnesium. You want your bowel movements to be formed and soft. If they get too soft, you have too much magnesium in your routine. That's a simple formula. It's a very simple way to test it every day. And the key is, if you know you're in a storm, take more mag and just monitor your bodily functions accordingly.
Terrific. So, as an example, if a person's 200 pounds and they're taking 1,000 milligrams, but they're going to the washroom a lot and they have disaster
Right.
pants, even, and it's not a great situation. Okay, I know Morley said I should have 1,000 milligrams, but my body is speaking to me. Let me back that off. It doesn't
Right.
mean that the magnesium is not working. It just means our body's talking to us. We've taken too much. And so we take the magnesium until we're not having the disaster pants. We're not going to the washroom all the time. It's a regular bowel movement. And then perhaps we can start moving it up to get back to that ideal level. So, how are we doing with that so far?
Absolutely. And the key is, there are many different forms of magnesium. As you know, you've got magnesium in water. It
Mm-hmm.
exists, especially Polish water. For anyone who might be living near a Polish market, get their Polish water. It's one of the highest concentrations of magnesium water on the planet. You get magnesium in your foods. Anything that's green is going to have magnesium in it. You can get magnesium through a transdermal route. You can use Epsom salts or magnesium chloride oil. It's not really
Mm-hmm.
oil, but it's filmy, so they call it an oil.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically dehydrated seawater. And then we get to the supplements, and there's about 25 different forms of chelated magnesium. I encourage people to use orglycinate. Those are the two that are best absorbed. I would encourage people to let the others go. There are just different forms of chelated forms. I think what we're really seeking to do is get the ones that are going to be the most absorbed, most used by the body. And that's going to be the malate and the glycinate.
Morley, for our listeners out there, I know you have worked with various manufacturing companies in the supplement side and you've helped them fine tune what the formulas are and what that should be like. We're going to include this in the show notes, but what would you recommend? So, if this is for yourself or a family member and it's, hey, Morley, what magnesium should I be taking? What would you be recommending out there?
Well, the magnesium that I've used consistently for many years is made by Jigsaw Health.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they have what's called magnesium SRT, slow release technology, great for magnesium. Another Formula IQ, another company that I'm working with. They make, again, glycinate and malate, wonderful products that are very effective. Any brand that's using Albion, Albion, Albion Minerals,
Mm-hmm.
is the largest manufacturer of minerals on the planet. And
Mm-hmm.
they have some very sophisticated technology to make sure we are going to absorb these minerals. But there are many companies that work with those Albion Minerals, but those are two companies in particular that I think would
Okay.
be.
And again, we'll have in the show notes all kinds of links. Let me ask you this. Is this a situation when it comes to magnesium that something's better than nothing? So if I'm in one of those big box stores and they have this magnesium there and it's at a terrific price, it maybe isn't up to perhaps the quality that you were sharing of the other two companies, but is that something still worth taking, or should I be really specific on the magnesium and the quality and the brand I'm taking?
Great question. Thank you for asking. Many of my clients go and buy the most expensive car oil they can from
Mm-hmm.
AutoZone or one of those retail places. And then I'll go down the street to Walmart and buy the cheapest supplements they can. What I advise them on every occasion is buy the best engineered supplements you can find and just put plastic oil into your car. It will work just as well. So we've got to flip that narrative. And so I think when it comes to our food and our nutrition and our supplements, it's all about engineering. And I have a feeling that the listeners of your program drive very elegantly engineered cars, and they want their supplement routine to follow suit.
Okay. Okay. So this is a situation where the brand, the quality does matter. And I suppose one way of looking at this, the dollars, I'm not going to say spent, but invested, the dollars that we're investing today in our health have a huge ROI. I mean, really, how can you put a price on health? And if we look down the road, it's keeping us healthier, keeping us out of the hospital, minimizing our downtime, all those positive things. And again, in the show notes, we'll have links to these different brands, these different supplements that you can think about. So we covered magnesium. And before we go on to the next one, I'd also like to ask again, on base, off base, my understanding from the research, magnesium is not just magnesium for magnesium's sake. Many other body processes will not function properly unless we have the right amount of magnesium. So you're not saying, well, Jeffrey, get that 1,000 milligrams of magnesium or that 750 milligrams of magnesium for the sake of magnesium. Hey, when you're at this level, then all these other body functions which haven't been working up till now will begin to work. Am I correct with that?
That's exactly right. And there are thousands of enzymes that depend on magnesium. The listeners might be intrigued to learn is that the energy molecule that runs our body is called adenosine. So
Okay.
that's an adenosine molecule that has three phosphate groups. And phosphate is just phosphorus and a bunch of oxygen. But in between the second and third phosphate group is a magnesium ion, gives that energy molecule its stability and its ease of action. And when we're under stress, the body's tapping into that reserve of, it's not really ATP, it's magnesium hyphen ATP. And when we cleave off that third phosphate group, as we do when we're under stress, the magnesium goes right into the toilet. And people need to know that we make our body weight in ATP every day.
Wow.
So 200 pounds, you're making a lot of ATP during the course of a day, but we're burning through it and we're recycling it constantly, right? And we need to have that magnesium at our disposal to make sure that the ATP is absolutely ideally available for transaction.
Okay. So it's really foundational, the magnesium. That's perhaps why you started there in the first place. So we can put a check next to magnesium. You've shared with us what to do, what to look for, how to start. So after magnesium, what would be the next thing that we should be considering?
I think the next issue that would intrigue your listeners is to understand that every day we're on planet Earth, we accumulate 1 milligram of iron. And so a simple formula to see how much iron you have in your body, get out your calculator, put in your age, and multiply it times 3. I'm 71. I have 26,000 milligrams of iron. And people don't know from Adam if that's too much, too little, what have you. But know that an adult human being is designed to have between 4 and 5,000 milligrams of iron. So I have a multiple. I have 5 times more iron because I'm older. And it's important for people to realize that every facet of aging, the loss of hair, the graying of hair, the wrinkles, the loss of energy, loss of muscle mass, the organ dysfunction, and so on and so forth. All of that is courtesy of a buildup of iron in the body. Fortunately, this is not rocket science, but it's not taught in doctor school. Again, we're back to it makes no economic sense to tell people how the system really works. People aren't going to make a living. And the way I characterize it is iron causes aging and copper causes longevity. People have never heard it reduced to such simple terms before. And I think as these conversations unfold, we can begin to get into a lot more detail for the listeners about why this iron does in fact accumulate, in large part because it's being added to our food system in ways that people didn't know about. It started actually in 1941 during the Second World War. A lot of very dark things were happening. And the US, the UK, and Canada all decided to add iron filings to the wheat flour, which is a stunning decision. And they would say it was based on science, and we have time in future conversations we can get into it. But here in the States, what happened in 1969 is that the FDA wanted to increase the amount of iron threefold, a 300% increase in iron. And 20 some scientists flew to Washington, D.C. back in 69 with one question: what are you trying to do? Kill people?
Mm.
And so, in a magnanimous gesture, the FDA reduced the requirement to a 50% increase above and beyond what was being added as of 1941. Nobody knew about this. And we see the phrase on the food label will say iron fortified or enriched flour. Well, the only people getting rich are the food manufacturers and the physicians who are treating the people, because excess iron is not our friend. And what, as I noted in the beginning of our conversation, what does iron like to do? It likes to play with oxygen. Well, if the oxygen isn't being activated and turned into energy, then it's available for transaction with iron. And that iron will, in fact, interact with the oxygen, create the oxidative stress that we talked about. And I can assure you there are over 30,000 conditions that are profiled in what's called the Bible of Medicine. The Merck Manual profiles all the different symptoms that people can have. And 100% of those symptoms begins with a lack of energy, which is also called oxidative stress, which was caused by dysregulated iron. That's what leads to this symptom or that symptom. The issue that a number of your listeners might be aware of is elevated cholesterol.
Sure.
You probably wondered, where did that come from? Again, that's the question is, why is the cholesterol high? So it's an important question. Well, it was actually in 1973 when a US-based cardiologist who's also has a PhD in mineral metabolism, he discovered that lack of copper causes cholesterol to rise. The part that your listeners don't know is that copper is the general and iron is the foot soldier. You don't need to be in the military to know that generals are more important than grunts. And generals have more brass on their shoulder. And what's brass made of? Well, it's made out of copper. And so the issue that no one knew about back in the 50s when Eisenhower had his first heart attack, and it was suddenly, oh, he has high cholesterol. It isn't just that it's cholesterol. It's that it was rusty cholesterol. Why was it rusty? Because of too much iron. And no one's ever connected those dots in the way that Leslie Clavet did back in 1973. And what was happening in 1973? The statin industry was being born. They were coming out with now the only $1 trillion product on the planet, statins. And for a research study to become science, one additional lab needs to verify the findings. Dr. Clavet first noted this in 1973. 30 labs around the world have now corroborated his findings. But that's not known in medical schools, again, because it flies in the face of how the system is wired. So the goal of these conversations is to empower your listeners to understand the story behind the story so they can make better decisions about their health.
Absolutely. So let's take a step back because we're going down in the weeds. We're talking about iron. So firstly, let me go back to what you said earlier, that if a person takes the age, multiplies it by 365, that's the number of milligrams that's in the body. So let's just say a person is 30. If I do the math right, I multiply that by 365, that's 10,950 milligrams. But you're saying we only need 4,000 to 5,000 milligrams. So in this case, it's an excess of 5,950 milligrams of iron in the body. How am I doing with that so far?
Absolutely right.
And then to take this forward then, so just like if we leave iron out, just out in the open, it's raining, it's cold, it's hot, it's sunny, it's snowing, whatever the case may be, over time, eventually that iron begins to oxidize, it begins to rust, and it changes form, and it's just not a good thing. And so what you're saying is when that excess iron is in the body, day over day, year over year, and it's more than what the body needs, we're literally rusting from the inside out. How am I doing with that so far?
Absolutely true. And the research is there to prove it. It's just not taught in medical school. The research is there, folks. It's just not in the curriculum of doctors.
And we'll remind our listeners, and it may be a little bit up or down. Most doctors, when I speak with them or when I hear them talk, they'll say, yeah, Jeffrey, in my entire medical education, I had 1 hour of nutrition. That's
Right.
it. Everything else was on all the other areas. And again, the conspiracy theories are coming out saying, well, Jeffrey, guess who sponsors the curriculum at the medical schools? It's the pharma companies. We'll leave that for another conversation, maybe even for another podcast. But in essence, what you're saying, left onto its own, if we have too much iron in the body, that's going to, it'll speed up our aging. It'll bring on other kinds of ailments that we don't want. You began to talk about copper. And so we'll get to copper now in terms of what's going on there. And I suspect, though, that when it comes to iron, for males, it's a bit of a different story than females. So females have their monthly cycle. They're
Right.
shedding all the excess iron, I suppose, through the monthly cycle. Men, that's not the case. And I know offline you shared with me, Jeffrey, get your blood taken at least once a quarter if you can, just to
Right.
get some of the blood out and reduce some of the iron. So, with that out of the way, let's talk about copper and the role of copper, what that looks like, what we should be having. And by the way, for all the listeners out there, we're not going to have time to go into the full details in this episode. I will share with you when I began to increase my copper. I was waking up 2, 3 in the morning, 3, 4 in the morning. I couldn't fall back asleep. My sleep was disjointed. I was feeling off. It suddenly came out of nowhere. Since I began following the RCP system, this is just very recently, my sleep has begun to really heal itself. The body did what it needed to do. I'm sleeping through the nights. I'm feeling rested. I have all these wearables that I check what's going on with my sleep and my health. All the markers are now going up in a positive way. So there is a method to this madness. It actually works. And it's very simple. It wasn't prescription drugs in my case. It wasn't doing anything complicated. It was getting the right supplements and doing the right things. So when it comes to copper, to compensate for that iron, what do you want us to know, Morley? What's going on with copper? How much? When do we take it? What does that look like?
See, the advantage our ancestors had is they got it in their diet. You go back into the annals of the 1930s, and the diet back then was delivering 4 to 6 milligrams of copper a day through the organ meats, through the legumes, through the nuts and seeds that we were exposed to.
Mm-hmm.
Those are very rich sources of copper. Then by the 1960s, that number had dropped to 2 to 5 milligrams. Not a huge drop, but a significant drop. Today, here in 2024, we're led to believe that we can get by on 9/10 of 1 milligram of copper, which is absolute insanity. Again, 2 generations ago, we were getting 4 to 6 milligrams. My mother's father, my grandfather, he was 72 years old the day I was born in 1952. And I have a vivid memory of helping him pull weeds on there was a hill on the side of his property. So I was 20 years old. He was 92. He was born in 1879. And we're pulling weeds. It was a hot summer afternoon. I started to fatigue. Dada just kept going. And he was raised in a different era. His mineral composition was different than mine. And so the piece that people need to understand is how important this copper piece is because we have trillion mitochondria. That's 15 zeros. It's a lot of mitochondria. It's about 500 mitochondria per cell in our body. And there's a little pool, a little blue pool. It's about the color of the shirt that you're wearing that people can't see, Jeffrey, but it's a very important color in the world of copper metabolism. But that blue pool is called the matrix, and it has copper in it, lots and lots of copper. And it's copper that enables that magnesium ATP to, in fact, be made throughout the day. And it's being made at the rate of 1,500 ATP per second. It's very important to our body. And so the challenge we've got now is that we have commercial farming systems that are using chemicals that you've alluded to, but there's a price to pay for those chemicals. They, in fact, they do fertilize things, they do kill pathogens and things like that, but they come at a cost, and the minerals are getting lost as part of the cost of using those chemicals, not the least of which is copper. And so we have to be vigilant about getting copper into our diet. And for years, I was promoting particularly the use of organ meats, especially liver, as a primary source of copper. It has iron in it as well. But healthy grass-fed beef cattle are supposed to have more copper in their liver than they have iron. What we're finding, though, is that ratio is not holding in the modern era. And so that's why we developed a copper supplement. And so people just need to kind of open their thought process about, well, maybe this is a supplement I've never heard about before. But to your own example and the experience that you've had directly, it has had a significant effect on addressing a number of the symptoms that you were experiencing. And this is true for so many of the different conditions that people have, because there is a very significant tension between the general and the grunts. So again, I haven't pointed out this, it takes about 100 milligrams. That's a very small amount. It's 100 milligrams will fit on the head of a 1-inch stick pin. So 100 milligrams of copper is keeping track of 5,000 milligrams of iron. If you start adding 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 milligrams as you age, well, then you've got to keep up with the copper side of the house in order to maintain homeostasis and balance in your metabolism.
And so, Morley, let's put a pause on things just so we can take a quick recap here of what we've been talking about, because it's important. And you said something that was very subtle, but our listeners need to know about this. And again, without going into all the details, and our listeners on their own can go research this, some of the quote unquote enhancements that's been put into the farming system, in other words, the chemicals that we're using in the modern farming system, it's depleting the earth of copper and all kinds of other things that are going on. So even people, and this would be myself, when we first started speaking, I said, Morley, I think I'm good on the copper side. I'm checking chronometer, and that measures all the substances, the elements, the minerals, the vitamins of what I'm eating and what I'm getting. And it shows I'm getting 9 to 10 grams of copper a day. And he said, well, Jeffrey, not so fast. Maybe you're eating beef organs. That's all great. Maybe you're seeing 9 to 10 in the app. But the reality is they haven't updated those profiles. They haven't really measured today what's in the food. And instead of 9 or 10, it's actually far less. So why don't you start supplementing with copper? And true to your word, as soon as I began doing that, fairly quickly, we're talking days, not months, I began to feel and see changes. So you're saying that copper helps to counterbalance what's going on with the iron. It'll help support what's going on with the magnesium. So again, in terms of how much copper should the quote unquote average person, I know everyone's different. Everybody responds different to various kinds of things. Generally speaking, though, how much copper should we take? What does that look like?
The formula that we came up with, it's called Recuperate. It has 2 milligrams. It has desiccated beef liver. It has spirulina. It has turmeric. But it has 2 milligrams of copper bisglycinate, again, courtesy of Albion Minerals. And it's a very bioavailable form of copper. I encourage people to start with 1, see how they feel with 1. After a week or 2, double it, see how they feel with that. And then you might try a third. But what's important for people to realize is that I've got many clients who have exceeded my recommendations. I've got a number of clients with sugar issues, type 2 diabetes. They find the sweet spot is 5 or 6 capsules. So that's 10 to 12 milligrams of copper. But what I'm hearing consistently from them is I finally have control over my blood sugar for the first time in my adult life. So again, the beauty and the downfall of this whole approach is I'm not engaged in a global science experiment. I'm just trying to help people feel better, have a more productive life, and really begin to erase the symptoms that they've been living with for most of their life. I have not engaged in any kind of scientific validation process to say, if you take this much, this is exact. We don't know. We're in the infancy. We're not even a decade in. I always think about what will it be like with 50 years experience, 100 years experience, to begin to document what people will likely have as their result. So I think the key is keep an open mind. I encourage people to be more curious. Gotta spell it right. CU-RIOUS. CU is the symbol for copper. Be more curious than concerned, and just see how your body responds. And there are many people who have approached it with some degree of caution or even skepticism and have been pleasantly surprised to see how well their body responded to this stimulus coming from a very important mineral that people don't know anything about.
Terrific. And again, just to do a quick recap, you can say, Jeffrey, you're on base or off base. When it comes to copper, what you've recommended is you've worked very specifically with this one supplement company to come up with a vitamin called Recuperate. And I've had a chance to take a look at what's in there. And you've combined a number of interesting minerals in there. And you're saying, why don't you start with perhaps one Recuperate a day, maybe put it up to two, see how your body reacts. I guess it depends on what you're eating in all your other areas with your meals, but begin that process to see where that goes. And for our listeners, I have no affiliation with Recuperate. And when I'm making that recommendation, there's nothing in it for me other than for your benefit. And if you really want to set it and forget it, that you want to minimize the number of vitamins that you're taking, you don't want to be taking a handful of vitamins, you want to have one vitamin that covers a lot of different functions. What I like about what you did with Recuperate is not just the copper that's in there. There's other minerals. We won't get into it for this conversation, but there's other minerals that the body needs that we're likely not getting from our food that we're eating or the water that we're drinking or in our environment that you cover with that. And it really is a set it and forget it when you begin to take that to get to your optimal level. So Morley, if we take a quick step back, you've walked us through why magnesium is so crucial. We're not getting enough of that from what we're eating or what we're drinking and what we can do to supplement with that. You talked about the dangers of iron and how really we're rusting from the inside out, what we can begin to do through copper. And I know there's a whole lot more that we can talk about. We're going to put a pause on the conversation for right now. We'll have other episodes where we'll go into that. But you provided a really terrific foundation for people to begin to open their eyes and their ears up to, hey, the narrative that you're hearing in the popular media, even from your doctor for your annual physical, it's the tip of the iceberg. And in fact, you may not be getting anything at all. Now, before we go into the wrap up mode, I know there's a special test that you developed, a blood test. I took this myself and it was enlightening. Again, we don't have the time to go into it in this episode, but I'll share with the listeners. In one area, he said, Jeffrey, I don't know how to tell this to you, but you have 17 times the normal level in this one area that you should have. Why don't we talk about this of how we can get it back to baseline? And it's a quick blood test. It wasn't all that expensive considering everything that's going on. Quickly, Morley, what's that blood test? What's going on with that? We'll have a link in the show notes, but you developed the full Monty, and I love your play on words. So what's the full Monty blood test?
It's really looking at 13 different blood markers, several that are focused on iron, several that are focused on the copper side, zinc, vitamin A, and vitamin D.
Mm-hmm.
We look at and uric acid is another component that we look at. Mm-hmm. And the whole idea here, what is useful for the listener, is that the focal point is taking steps to increase the body's ability to make what's called bioavailable. Copper exists as a mineral, we know that. But in the human body, in any mammal's body, it needs to be put into the right kinds of enzymes. It needs to be able to do its work. And what's really critical for that is vitamin A, which is only available through animal-based sources. Beta carotene is not the same as retinol. We can have that conversation later. But the key is this blood test is designed to look at these different components and look at the ratios between selected markers to see, is the body in balance? Is it out of balance? Why might it be out of balance? And really begin to relate it back to the stress mosaic that everyone is living. We all have a different pattern of stress. We all take it in stride because we're tough people. But at the end of the day, that pattern of stress that we're going through is going to affect our mineral status, which is then going to affect our physiology. And so we use the blood test as a, if you will, a dipstick to see how the body's responding to stress, but then to use it also as a stimulus to have a conversation about, so how well are you dealing with your stress? What are you doing to begin to address that pattern of stress so that we begin to mitigate, to begin to rein in the oxidative stress that's taking place? Because whenever we have what's called chronic stress, playing in the background is this emotion called fear, because we think it's never going to go away. We have to spell fear properly. It's Fe-AR. That way we see the symbol for iron.
Sure.
When you're in a state of fear, you become a magnet for
Mhm.
iron. Now think back on what the last 4 years have been like on this planet. It's been subliminal fear for the entire time. We have dysregulation in our copper and iron as a result of it. And maybe in a subsequent conversation, I can explain what's actually happened. But I
Mhm.
think it's important for the listener to know that this pattern of stress that we've been under has a price to pay. And at the end of the day, copper and iron are going to get out of regulation with each other. And our energy production is going to suffer. And when energy goes down, then different body parts begin to suffer. And that goes back to your rhetorical questions from several minutes ago to help the listener understand, oh, wow, this is beginning to make more sense to me as it
Sure.
relates to what I'm worried about and how the life that I'm living may be contributing to it.
And to put this in perspective for our listeners out there, again, before we wrap this up, very briefly, I will share with you I've been a biohacker for many years. I've tried and still do the intermittent fasting. I'm very careful of what I eat, the types of foods that I eat, the whole foods. I've tried continuous glucose monitors. I wear all these different wearables to track sleep and everything else. And until I spoke with Morley, I thought, you know what? I'm doing pretty much everything I can. My health is probably at an 8 or 9 out of 10. The challenge was, or the problem was, that the traditional blood panels that I was getting, and believe me, I was going above and beyond what the average person would get with the blood panels. I would get them and they'd come back, Jeffrey, you're doing really well in these areas. Yeah, maybe you can prop things up a little bit here or there. But the point was, if you really want to get different results, ask different questions. And Morley, the blood panel that you put together, it asks the different questions. And in
Right.
fact, some of these blood tests, your doctor probably doesn't even really know about, doesn't know that it exists. And most of the other companies out there aren't monitoring this. It doesn't mean that what you're doing is wrong. Quite the opposite. It's just not known. And if it's not known, how can they cover it? Once I took these blood tests, wow, was that a pick yourself up off the floor, Jeffrey, because you thought you were healthy. And in some ways you were, but in other ways you really weren't. And you were headed for some not so great days ahead, even though you thought you're doing everything right. So for our listeners, again, we'll put a link in the show notes. Click on that link, get that blood test. Morley, I know you're generous with your time. You'll have phone calls, you'll have emails, you'll walk people through the big picture. You
Right.
also have a very reasonable program where you can walk people through on a one-on-one basis what's going on and what's to do or what's not to do or what you should be looking at or not looking at or how to get to the next level in the best of ways. But for our listeners, click on that link, get that blood test, reach out to Morley as I did. It'll be a complete game changer for you. So, Morley, we're at the point where we're going to put a pause on this conversation. Hopefully, we'll have you back and you'll continue to share your wisdom and your insights because I know we're just touching really the tip of the iceberg here. Before we go into wrap up mode, we talked about a lot of things. If there's one thing that a person should either stop doing or start to do, if it's one thing only, what would that be? Because every episode, we like to have one action that can either be stopped or started. What would you recommend for our listeners?
After 15 years of research, a lot of time reflecting on that research, please get more copper in your diet. It is the game changer. It's the critical piece of the puzzle that's been missing for a long
Mhm.
time.
So, more copper in the diet. We spoke about the recuperate as one very attainable, easy, really effortless way of doing that, but in general, to get more copper into the diet.
Absolutely. I know the risk is that people think, well, oh, he's just a supplement whore. I fought this whole issue for over a decade. But after 2020, when I realized what was actually happening, I couldn't stay on the sidelines anymore. And that's what motivated me to go into partnership with this company to develop this product, not for economic gain. My conscience would not allow me to see what the real issue was and not come up with a meaningful, tangible, effortless solution to the problem. That's the focal point of what Recuperate is all about.
And for listeners, Morley is being very modest. He has taken decades of research because, Morley, I know you've reached out to some of the top thinkers in the world to talk to them about their studies and the research that you've done. And in this Recuperate, I know it sounds like an infomercial. It really isn't. But in this Recuperate, you've really put together something that, you know what, it's so terrific. Putting myself aside, I spoke to my mother. I now have my mother taking Recuperate for her health and for her well being. So, for all the listeners, check that out. Again, we're going to put that in the show notes. It's really for your benefit because our first health is our wealth. So, Morley, we're going to go into wrap up mode. Now, because you're going to be coming on a number of times, I'll have the privilege and the pleasure of asking you this same question a number of times. And who knows, maybe you'll give us the same answer. Maybe it'll be a different one. But this is the first time through, the first kick at the can. So, we'll see where it goes. It's a fun question. It's a ritual here on the Deep Wealth podcast. So here's the question. I'll set it up for you. When you think of the movie Back to the Future, you have the magical DeLorean car that will take you to any
Just
point in time.
watched it 2 days ago. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Wow. Talk about serendipity.
Yeah.
So with the DeLorean car, here's the great news, Morley. It's tomorrow morning. You look outside your window. Not only is the DeLorean car there, it's curbside. The door is open. It's waiting for you to hop on in, which you do. You're now going to go to any point in your life, Morley, as a young child, a teenager, whatever point in time that would be. What are you telling your younger self in terms of life lessons or life wisdom? Or, hey, Morley, do this, but don't do that. What would it sound like?
Wow, loaded question. We all have a scar. My scar was when I was 6 years old. My dad, he had manic depression and schizophrenia. So when I was 6 years old, in 1958, he was scheduled to have his second electric shock therapy.
Okay.
For those of you who've seen Cuckoo's Nest, you know what that's all about.
Sure.
And he did not want to do that again. And he ran away from home, never to come back. And I share that. I've shared this with listeners over the years, but you asked the question in such a powerful way. I want to make sure people understand how important this is. So if I could dial it back to any date, it would be 1959 to go to Tulane University, where a group of psychiatrists, 2 from Harvard, but 1 from Tulane, used the copper protein ceruloplasmin. And with 1 shot of ceruloplasmin, in subsequent conversations, we can talk about why this is so important. But with 1 shot of ceruloplasmin, they cured 30 of 34 people of their schizophrenia. But at the exact same time as that research was taking place, my dad was scheduled for electric shock therapy, which is the most regressive, offensive intervention for a problem that is caused by lack of bioavailable copper. And I would love to go back to that time and make that vial of ceruloplasmin available to anyone who's having any kind of problems. And here's the irony of all ironies. If you were to go to your favorite physician and ask them, hey, I'd like to get some of that ceruloplasmin, they don't even know what you're talking about. They've never even heard the word in their medical school. And yet in 1959, it was the sine qua non for curing the most outrageous mental condition on the planet, schizophrenia. So again, the listener needs to know that I have tremendous passion around this heartache, personal heartache, and I've been given the opportunity in this lifetime to be able to understand this in a way. And it's funny, one of my students, because I always think about this Back to the Future. You have no idea, you're tapped into my psyche with this. But I've often joked that I'm remembering things from another lifetime. And the student said, you don't understand. She said, well, you're from a time in the future, and you came back to this timeline to help humanity. And I'm like, okay, that fits. That makes sense. So again, I'm there with Doc, with the wires, trying to get the car to get up to 88 miles an hour. And so it's been an absolute phenomenal experience to work through that heartache as a little boy, realize why it happened, but now to be in a position of sharing that wisdom with people around the world. And I get calls and letters and emails from people all over the world thanking me for saving their life. I have no idea who these people are. I'm just so blessed to, one, have conversations like this, but to be able to share this information that for some reason that encounter with Dr. Liz woke me up. I went into this programmed reality that I was supposed to get into when I was 56 years old. And I'm telling you, I'm not letting up. I'm just hitting my stride now. So I look forward to sharing other insights with the listeners. And I hope that I've not overwhelmed you with my response to your very thoughtful and provocative question about the DeLorean, because I love that movie.
Well, firstly, thank you for being so open, so vulnerable, sharing a very personal journey. And it really sounds like that for you, this is a crystallizing moment of why you've dedicated your life to what you're doing to
Yeah.
really make a difference out there. And I appreciate that. I know the community appreciates that. And so, Morley, before we wrap this up, if a listener has a question, they want to reach out to you, they want to have a conversation with you, where's the best place online they can reach you?
This is the best part about the interview. People can reach out to me on email is my first and last name, Morley Robbins at gmail.com. And for those brave few, my phone number is area code 847-922-8061. And this is usually when the podcast host kind of goes into hypoxia. Oh, dude, you just gave out your phone number. I do it all the time. And I'm honored to have those conversations because what I've learned, Jeffrey, is that the people who really need to have that conversation will reach out. And I always welcome the exchange that takes place.
Absolutely. And he really stands behind what he's saying. I know, Morley, I took you up on that. I called you out of the blue. You picked up the phone. You answered my email. We didn't know each other from Adam, as the saying goes. And fast forward, here we are. So for our listeners, again, we're going to have all this in the show notes. And this is not the end. This is just the beginning. It's the continuation. But for the moment, we'll say it's a wrap. And as we love to say here at Deep Wealth, Morley, thank you so much. And may you continue to thrive and prosper while you remain healthy and safe. God bless.
Thanks again.
So there you have it, Deep Wealth Nation. What did you think? So with all that said, and as we wrap it up, I have another question for you. Actually, it's more of a personal favor. Did you find this episode helpful? Have you found other episodes of the Deep Wealth Podcast empowering and a game changer for your journey? And if you said yes, and I really hope you did, I have a small but really meaningful way that you can actually help us out and keep these episodes coming to you. Are you ready for it? The dramatic pause. I'll just wait a moment. Drum roll, please. Subscribe. Please subscribe to the Deep Wealth Podcast on your favorite podcast channel. When you subscribe to the Deep Wealth Podcast, you're saving yourself time. Every episode automatically comes to you. And I want you to know that we meticulously craft every one of our episodes to have impactful strategies, stories, expert insights that are designed to help you grow your profits, increase the value of your business, and yes, even optimize your post-exit life and your life right now, whatever you want that to look like. And every time you subscribe and a fellow entrepreneur subscribes, it's a testament to how together, yes, we are changing the social fabric of society. One business owner at a time, one liquidity event at a time. So don't let the momentum stop here. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast channel. You'll never miss an episode. You'll be the first to hear from the top industry leaders, the innovators, the disruptors that are really changing and shaping the business world. And maybe you're commuting, maybe you're at the gym, maybe you're taking a well-deserved break that we spoke all about on this episode. The Deep Wealth Podcast, it's your reliable source for the next big idea that could literally revolutionize your business. So once again, please hit that subscribe button, stay connected, inspired, and ahead of the curve. And again, your next big breakthrough moment, it might just be one episode away. Maybe it was even this episode. So all that said, thank you so much for listening. And remember, your wealth isn't just about the money in the bank. It's about the depth of your journey and the impact that you're creating. So let's continue this journey together. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for listening to this episode. And as we love to say here at Deep Wealth, may you continue to thrive and prosper while you remain healthy and safe. Thank you so much. God bless.